All right, well, as we get started, I just wanted to say welcome to a practical guide on cybersecurity. And I'm Brandon Farr. I just want to be clear as we start. I'm not going to sell you anything at the end of this video. You're not going to see any paid ads. I don't need your likes or your subscriptions. This is because, frankly, I know what it's like to be a business owner launching into the business space, knowing that there's a cybersecurity threat out there, ransomware exists, and not knowing what to do about it, where to begin. And everybody on YouTube or whether it be blog links is trying to sell a thing, an approach, and frankly, it was boggling. And I feel like after 4 years of actively investing a significant amount of time and energy in this place, in this space of cybersecurity in business, I've worked out some guiding principles that have served us as an organization super well, and I just want to share them with you. So, as we jump right in, let's just define your business right here. Right here. This is your business. And for clarity, there's what I'm going to talk about here as best principles works for sole proprietors or businesses up to, say, 50 employees. The Microsoft ecosystem that I am a part of, it's fun being in the Microsoft ecosystem that I'm a part of ranks me as a business between 0 and 1,000 employees and kind of lumps us all into one. And admittedly, I think that's a little optimistic. I can see how we do as an organization against, from a cybersecurity standpoint, against organizations with 1,000 employees, and we're well above average for sure. But I feel like, from 3 to 50 is a reasonable size comparison. After this, you might want to get into things like internal servers and whatnot. That's for another conversation. So what I want you to understand is core principles of cybersecurity are built around protecting your business. Okay, so if we define your business as this, your business has perimeters to it. And this is super important to know. You need to define your business, where you start and stop, where your employee's personal life starts and stops. These are all these things. And when I talk about cybersecurity, I want you to be clear. This is not a doom and gloom, scary, dangerous thing. That's not the energy I bring to this conversation. Lots of people do. And lots of people have paid lots of money for ransomware. $500,000 to get your information back is a sizable sum. But I want to talk about cybersecurity from a proactive standpoint, like a business continuity, right to play standpoint. That's how I view this. So in the same way that a football player goes onto the field and they put their helmet on, it stops them from getting hurt, but it also allows them to play for year after year after year. The padding, the protection they place around them gives them the best chance to keep doing what they love to do. So it's a proactive measure built on the principles of having the ability to continue to play. That's how I view cybersecurity. So we're going to talk about threats, but it's not like I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to feel empowered, like you can do something to mitigate them. So your business is defined by this. And in the same way that you lock the front door of your house when you leave to go to work in the morning, you want to keep your business locked so that you can let in the people that you want in can come in, and the people you don't want in can't come in. That's what this is all built around. And we're going to talk about a couple of things here, primarily hardware and software. And I'm going to tell you what I did. I'm not going to tell you what you need to do. There are going to be people that tell you other things, but this has worked really well for us. I have Mac hardware for myself and all my employees. I run Windows software and cloud infrastructure. So it's a Microsoft 365 cloud infrastructure, obviously Microsoft Word and Excel associated with that. I have intentionally chosen to not use Google for anything personal or anything private or internal in our organization. I use that for others outside of my organization, and I'll explain why. Hardware and software need to play together, and I see people make errors when they start to combine different things. There is something about an ecosystem that works really well when it's continuous, and so when I use an iPhone with an iPad and a MacBook Pro computer, there's a continuity in the hardware that allows the system to play together really nicely. Play meaning files and photos transfer and automatically update, and I can copy on my phone and paste on my computer, and there's just a business flow. But also the software piece, the UX piece, they all integrate and play together really nicely. And there's also continuity of privacy on the information that's transferred between the two. Contrast all Mac hardware to I have a Google Pixel phone and an iPad and a Microsoft computer. Those don't play well together. So anytime you transition from one piece of infrastructure to another, there has to be a linking. And anytime there's a link, there's a potential for weakness. And weakness being a way for people to get in. But honestly, more than that, for frustrations for your employees because this doesn't sync with that, because the latest update on this software didn't sync with the old previous update on the new one, and when are they going to patch that? It's just, it can create a lot of frustration for you, because when the links between Apple and Google don't work, there's a separation, and all of a sudden the continuity of information isn't the same. What you can be assured of if you're all Google, all Apple, all Microsoft is that when they do their updates, they do it with their infrastructure in mind to maintain the strength of the bond, because you do need hardware in your business. So again, I've had lots of good success with the reliability of the Mac ecosystem. Again, if you're a solopreneur, I think you have a little bit of license here to jump into passwords. So we'll jump forward a little bit to go password keepers. I'm going to recommend that if you're a business with employees who needs to share passwords. If you're a solopreneur, like a graphic designer, as an example, and you work in your business and it's primarily you, you have the privilege using like onboard password keeping software inside your own hardware, which is again another layer of encryption. So it's your Face ID, your finger ID, whatever, that keep your passwords on your stuff that nobody else has access to. But it allows them to be complicated passwords that are randomized so that nobody's going to guess them. You have that option if you keep your hardware the same. If you, again, in my hypothetical example of a Google phone and an iPad and a Windows computer, that there's no opportunity to do that, so you're mandated to go to an external password keeper, which isn't bad. Again, then your external password keeper has to link to 3 different platforms, which again adds complexity and opportunity for it to break. So you're going to watch me advocate. Continuity of business means continuity of hardware, continuity of software. And when I think about everything's in the cloud these days, and I love that because I could literally take my computer, go throw it in the lake, go to Best Buy, get a new computer, and the cloud would allow me to get back to work in 2 hours, which is brilliant. And I'm very grateful for that. It's also where all your information is stored, and for better or worse, if it's not literally in your building and filing cabinets, it's accessible to others who can get access to it. So this is why we're having these conversations. Cybersecurity is built around the idea that there are people out there trying to get access to your information. And I've discovered that information leaves your business in one of 3 ways. I think in some capacity, there's the bad guy out here that's trying to steal it. There's also another situation where you have an employee that's frustrated and they're going to steal it out. So this is a stranger. This is an employee. And then there's a third scenario, which is very real. You have an oops, I didn't mean to. And these happen in a couple of different ways. If you have, and this is actually what facilitated my transition, my awakening. I say awakening because I was like, oh crap, I was really nervous about it. When I was working, everything was on Google Drive 5 years ago. I was really proud because like, I owned a construction company. We're putting everything in the cloud, and all of a sudden I can share information with clients, and I'm feeling all sophisticated. I'm on my Google Drive, and I have a signed contract, and I'm about to send it, and it's like, I go to the share permissions, and then I remember very specifically the little, I'm not like super proficient at this point, and I go, advanced and click, and I could go share with people in my organization, share with specific link, or share with the World Wide Web. No sign-in required. It's like click. So if you get like Google link, it's like Brandon's financial information. Yeah, it's like I realized with the click of one radio button, everything in my Google Drive was instantly accessible to everybody in the World Wide Web. And that was an immense vulnerability that violated two guiding principles for me. Everything that we need to install in business, especially for the benefit of our employees, needs to live by the easy to succeed, hard to fail set of principles. And I realized it might have been easy to succeed. Sharing is as quick as put it on the drive, click share, hit the button and send. Easy to succeed, but super easy to fail if the idea is information security and data protection. It was just so evident for me that I could have made that error. I almost did. I think I went in and clicked it, and then I went back and did it and realized I clicked the wrong one. And I just, by no malintention, that's how information can leak the business. Really important stuff. I know one story where an engineering company, they had an intern that went to upload to YouTube their folders, and rather than linking the YouTube video from like their promotional videos, he shared the entire YouTube portfolio of their intellectual property videos that was internal to the company. They posted it live to YouTube for the world to see. That was all their intellectual property. So, oops, didn't mean to, still happened. Another option of this is if you have a work phone and your kid gets on it and they're trying to download different games and whatnot, and those games are spying on your information. You can't stop that. You didn't mean to. Nobody meant to let it out. It still leaked out via exposure. Very different than an employee that's like, stealing corporate information and taking it out of the business. All the best spy movies have a version of this, and also very different than somebody trying to jump into your business and take your information. So defining it that way. Apps are really interesting things, and we live in a world where everyone's trying to sell you a $15 a month per user application for your business. And as an organization, we actively avoid this, because what occurred to me is that an app are these things that sit outside of your company. They're not in your control. You don't have jurisdiction over them. And every single one of them gets a gateway into your business. They get a key because they need to manage information. You want to limit the amount of keys that you give out to different applications because you can't control the permissions. You can't control who they share your information with. You're trusting that they have back-end security servers. We know that it's a complicated world out there, and the less people that have access to all your stuff, the better. So there is a point where you're going to have to trust some. And for us as an organization, we've trusted Apple with our hardware, Microsoft with our cloud infrastructure. We've done 1Password as our password keeper because I wanted a place where I could share my logins to my different employees based on the confidentiality of the information and who needed access to what. And I wanted it all in one place that everybody had access to all the time, so I could make sure the passwords are super long. And so I went with a password keeper versus that note on your computer that has all your passwords on it that you can text to your people as needed, and that's just terribly not good. Don't do that. And then we did Stripe for payments because, when we jump into things like, there's a couple of things that you're going to want to manage, whether you're a proprietor or a business with lots of employees. There's some regulatory compliance things you need to make sure that you abide by. In Canada, that's PIPA, which is like Personal Information Protection Act. And then there's a step higher for if you're dealing with vulnerable sector like children's and medical records and stuff like that. We've all heard about GDPR in Europe. That doesn't apply here, but the principles are in essence here, and they are coming. So best to get in front of these things, work out your processes before they are imposed. But all that to say, I realized that the vulnerability, first of all, cybersecurity, you can reduce the threat in two ways. One, defend yourself appropriately from the threat. Fine, put a helmet on before you go play football. Perfect. But also, if you don't have valuable information, it's like Do you lock your front door of your house with all your stuff in it? Yes. Do you lock your garden shed with rakes and shovels? Maybe not. Do you want somebody to steal your rakes and shovels? No, but if they do, who cares? It's like the consequences are so much smaller than if they break in and steal grandma's, heirloom jewelry. And so I'm saying that it's like one of the things that's super important is financials. So when clients want to pay us with a credit card, I never want to store their credit card information in my business. I don't want it. I don't want it. I actually, there's no link here. There's no like bridge. If you're going to pay me via credit card, you're going to pay Stripe. Stripe's going to manage the process, take your credit card, manage your transactions. They're going to send me a portion of that payment days later. Good. I don't want to see your credit card number. Just like I don't want to see your social insurance number. It's like those are high stakes private information that as an organization, if we collect it, we have to protect it. So one of the best defensive strategies we have is like, let's not collect anything that's super important to other people so that if somebody does get access to it, either intentionally or accidentally, we're not compromising anything that our clients would feel violated by. So nonetheless, there's still things in your organization and our organization that are going to be important, like our employees' social insurance numbers and our corporate records or bank statements, things like this. So we do need to protect those. So again, we do maintain a sense of permission. But all that's intended to do one very important thing. If these are the people in your organization, we want free-flowing transfer of information at all times between the people in your organization so they can make game time decisions for the client in the marketplace to the best possible. I've seen people go astray in the world of cybersecurity when everything's so constricted and so like rules-based and permissions suffocating the creative energy and the momentum of business. We don't want that. Again, if you have a strong perimeter where the hardware works together with the software and there's not a lot of apps with backdoors into your, like you're not doing, I'm not saying Zapier's not good or Asana's not good, but we don't use them because Microsoft has an alternative. We've already decided they're a trusted partner. I've decided that they have enough business infrastructure in place to manage the cybersecurity risks at play as well or better than anybody else. And if Microsoft Teams works, why am I using Zoom? I don't want another person, another organization with access to my business just because I care about this and I'm responsible for this. So least permissions is a thing. Again, managing apps and their access to your business is a thing. And the work for us as organization is to create a philosophy of I don't go add things and give them access to my business. I just don't. I actively work against that. There's no, like, when we go want to create forms, we know that Google does forms, but Microsoft also does forms. So our surveys are on Microsoft, not SurveyMonkey. Even though it might be cooler and slicker, again, I mitigate the fact that my personal information is held by my personal corporate information is held by another organization. I don't want that to happen, so I keep that internal inside my already designated trusted partners. Because some of y'all's organizations look like this, and then you forget who, or employees decide that they want to try one that's different, so you don't have any sense of continuity, and Bobby's using this program and Susie's using that program, and then when Bobby leaves, Susie doesn't have access to that information, and it's like, it's chaos. Avoid all that. It's just, it adds complexity to your world as well as it adds vulnerability. So that's apps. Users are super important, and just because this is like a practical field guide, users are really important in terms of delineating access. And of course, and if this is yourbusiness.com, Bobby at yourbusiness.com and Susie at yourbusiness.com and Charlie at yourbusiness.com all have access to all of your information. Brandon at mybusiness.com should not have access to your information. And one of the things that you're going to want to do is make sure that you have your permissions set up through your Drive ecosystem, like your cloud-based ecosystem, so that information can transfer freely inside your organization, but not leave. There should be a defense. It should be hard to share information outside. It should bounce off this. Now, sometimes bounce might be a simple, are you sure you want to share this PDF with somebody outside of your organization? Yes, I do, because I'm collaborating with them and I can send it. As distinct from just being able to send information freely outside of your organization, potentially important information. So how we've actually done that is we put a lot of controls around our internal business files, and we use a Microsoft ecosystem because it's I found it durable, and I'll explain more about the protection that I feel like it extends in contrast to Google Drive. But Google Drive is still fantastic, and Google Drive is very good at sharing liberally. So I find it is a good collaboration tool with people outside of my organization. Plus, it also creates a literal separation between inside my organization and outside my organization. So what we did is we said, okay, everything internal, you need to have a @mybusiness.com, my business, user to get access to it. If I want to share with your business, then what I need to do is I can share in I have a My Business Google Drive set up, and I have a folder in that called Shared with Others Outside of Our Organization. Now, once I'm in there, and I can list, Bobby@yourbusiness.com, I can drag and drop a folder shared to that. So I have to drag it off of my cloud onto my desktop and then up into Google Drive. Wow, that seems like a lot of work. But once it's in Google Drive, I can share it. It's a lot of work, and it does two things simultaneously. One, it makes darn sure that I want to share that file with Bobby. There's no accidental, there's no I forgot. It also very specifically limits exactly what Bobby from outside my organization gets access to. He doesn't get access to everything. He gets access to only very specifically what I've dragged and dropped. Sometimes people send a file of information, even though it's one PDF or two PDFs that are required. They get the whole file. We don't want that. Secondly, I don't have Google Drive linked to my computer. I have to go into the browser and drag up into the browser, and it uploads. It's not that little icon on top of the computer where the Drive thing's always syncing. I don't want that, because what I discovered a few years ago is that if you do get a virus or a ransomware on your computer, it usually comes in through email, it'll lock up your computer, then that little auto syncing thing, it'll lock up your Drive, and then it'll lock up your entire cloud ecosystem. So then it's all locked. So your cloud doesn't actually offer you protection from ransomware or viruses unless it's separated. So part of the physical separation is the non-auto syncing piece. That's just an extra redundant. Again, it serves the human side of do I mean to, and serves the protection. Like it's an active break in connection between the two Google and Microsoft and Apple ecosystems that serves our benefit long term. In case one of them's compromised, it doesn't compromise everything. Guests, obviously, you can give access temporarily. Defining users, guests, and clients. So guests are these people that we collaborate with, usually, often other businesses, and that's like my graphic designer who doesn't work for us but does our graphic designing. She's brilliant. I need a way to freely exchange information with her. Now she's in a satellite company right here, so I want to have a way to quickly delineate what information she gets access to, what caliber of information, whether it be public information or top secret information, where she gets access to it and how. But because she still needs free flow. This is one of those things. If I'm working, we're collaborating, time matters. So I don't want lots of frustration in document transfer. So again, we'll use a Google Drive system because there's a free flow and exchange. And then once the contract's done, I can take everything off of the Google ecosystem and pull it down onto the computer and back up to the OneDrive. So I can very intentionally do that. And then close that folder or leave that as an open access that's very specifically in the shared with other people outside of the organization graphic designer file. So again, super confined. So it's okay to have these, but have a mechanism of controlling the ins and outs of people outside your organization. They should not have a freely share with anybody at their discretion. You should, from inside your organization, transfer information that they have access to. Then they can come and go out of this box, but you define this box. That's super critical. Clients, these are people that we don't necessarily work with, but we serve, often sharing pictures and emails. I feel like emails are a great way, but again, the opportunity with that is the Google Drive. You can set up a system if you have a long-term client, again, so you have a common access point, and most people are familiar with Google. And then what happens in the Google space also if there's a corrupt file that goes into Google and it locks up your Google Drive, it doesn't auto sync down to your computers because frankly you can't control what your clients do and the caliber. Like I've had an engineer that was hacked and they sent a corrupt Excel file to all of us, and it was only because it looked a little suspicious that he was reviewing a document. We hadn't worked with him in a while, so I actually picked up the phone before I clicked on the accessory, the attachment, and I called the office, and sure enough, they said, yeah, we've been hacked. Sorry, that's happened to all of our clients. They had sent out, they obviously got the email list of all their contacts and sent out this corrupt Excel file to everybody, and you don't want to be in that position because there's a vulnerability there for everybody. So all that to say, which segues into malware, viruses, and ransomware. These are all bad actors that are coming after your information, and they serve different purposes. I'm taking for granted also that when you're in business, you're not like Intel developing the latest top secret chip, and corporate espionage is a real thing, and people are actually trying to okay, so if you're below that level of business and you're just out there doing really well, you need to be aware that there are people, and now there are computers that are using machine learning to really enhance their capacity to solve password problems, which is this piece down here. So that's why my old password, I'm gonna use a fictitious one. I'm just gonna pick Charlie. Imagine Charlie was my password, and then if they needed a digit, it was Charlie1, and then if they needed a special character, it was Charlie1 exclamation mark, and that was my password. And it was a password for everything, so I had one password for everything. So if you guessed it once, you guessed it for everything, which is a vulnerability. But now, so that was a complicated password. I thought, no, it was just convenient for me because I didn't want to remember all of my passwords for all of my different things because it was so frustrating, and I hated the fact that I had to do this, and I was kind of flying by the law of averages. I'm just a little guy, who's going to pick me? And then I realized that there's computers doing this randomly. They're not looking for you and your business. They're just looking for businesses, because the fact is that robots can figure out your patterns and decipher your software or your passwords to different software. And this is why apps are vulnerable, because some they figure, what's the problem is sometimes they figure out how to get into one particular app, and if it's an Asana or if it's a WordPress or it's a whatever, like they figure out how to get in the back door of that. And once they get in the back door of that, they can get into everything because you've already given that app permission. So they just got to get into that app, and they can get into 1,000 clients. If this app is Asana. I'm not talking bad about Asana. They're good people. I used to use them. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but as an example of a CRM software, if they can get access to Asana, they get access to Asana's clients, and then they have access to 1,000 businesses in one shot. So they'll often, knowing that these have free-flowing access, they'll try to get in through here to get into what you're doing. And there's just computers doing it these days, which means that really nobody is below the threshold of significance. You might be below the significance of really fancy social engineering hacking, but that's again beyond the scope of what we're trying to accomplish here. Passwords are super critical. Again, I alluded to this. If you're a proprietor, you have a really neat advantage to keep everything. I like Apple. I believe in their privacy. But the problem I had as a business is that Apple's so focused on my individual privacy that it won't let me share my passwords with my employees. And it creates this cumbersome exchange. So we got a password keeper. I use 1Password. I love the fact that it's Canadian. They keep their stuff in the country. It's a high quality. I trust, again, they literally hold all the passwords to all my stuff. So it is this trust exchange. So don't ever pick a free app or the lowest price one. These are mission critical. Your business infrastructure, it should never be the cheapest, the lowest. And by golly, if you're signing up for a free app, they're selling you. That's how that works, because that app is a hardworking business trying to survive, and one of the ways they sell or they generate revenue is by selling you and your data. So just be super mindful of that. That's why I don't have a problem paying a significant subscription fee to Microsoft for the services they provide from a software perspective with Word and Excel, from a collaboration perspective with Teams, and from a cybersecurity perspective from the Azure Active Directory and Credential Manager, and then ultimately the Exchange, Microsoft Exchange email server. So this piece right here, I feel like your greatest vulnerability, my greatest vulnerability in terms of access, it comes in the form of emails. And because that's where your email address isn't hard to come by. It's everywhere, which means that all they have to do is see that you have an email address. They don't even need your passwords. They just need to send you an email. Hopefully click the link, and the link will get your password from you, so on and so forth. So why I shifted, one of the main reasons why I shifted to Microsoft was to address this. Their Exchange server does a really good job at filtering out malware. You have to set up the policies and the permissions, but it actually does a really good job at making it easy for my employees to succeed and hard for them to fail. If it stops the malware, the ransomware from even getting to their inbox, there's really no chance that they're going to click it, which is a big step forward towards letting them respond to their emails so they can get to work. The other one, ransomware. This was why Microsoft 365 was my answer from Google. Because what I realized is that if we did ransomware, or if ransomware did happen to us, it would likely come in through my email, okay? And then it would lock up my hardware, sync up to the drive, and then lock up my drive. Google doesn't, at the time, they didn't offer any protection against ransomware. And protection from ransomware looks like a detection of, hey, there's this slow encryption taking place. Alert, alert, alert. This looks like ransomware, which Microsoft will do for me. But secondly, there's no archiving feature. So if your drive gets locked up and you don't want to pay $100,000 to get it back, you can't go back in time and get it back. Whereas in Microsoft, it's auto archiving. So if I got ransomware on January 1st, I could go back to December 1st and upload my drive from then and start over. Like Google, you'd have to auto upload every single one of your files, the auto restore. And that is to say painful process is a significant understatement. And I don't want you to ever have to do that. We have like thousands, like tens of thousands of files in our organization. It's an unrealistic assignment. And so the fact that the archiving was like, that sealed the deal for me. I need to have a word processor anyways, like I need Microsoft Word because clients send me documents. So I just chose to go all the way in with Microsoft, and it served us super well so far. We went with the Microsoft E5 subscription. We got one E5 subscription for the organization. It's like a $75 a month subscription. So yes, it's a heavy one. But what it does is obviously does all the Exchange. I can set up malware permissions, policies, but there's like threat defenders, and it gives me a score. And it is really actually, with a high degree of confidence, allowed me to walk into the world of proper data security in my organization and take it to a high level. I know that I'm in an A to A plus category for organizations up to 1,000 people, because it lets me rank. In contrast, I know where my vulnerabilities are in terms of scores out of 100. I can see that our app score is super low in terms of overall protection. Our identity and login credentials are super high. But the app score is super low because, we don't have apps. We don't plug in like the Zapiers and the Salesforce and the whatevers, and because we've chosen to keep this super, super concise. And so I just feel empowered and informed. And now, hear me. I'm not selling you Microsoft product. I don't get commissions from this. I'm telling you what we did. You could tell me that there's other ways to do it. And I was doing some research, and we'll see some blogs. People are like, yeah, Google doesn't do backups, cloud backups, or restore backups, but you can get a company like Kryptonite to do that. And they're a web-based app. I'm like, okay. So the logic for that makes no sense, because then you have this third party, so all the most important parts of your business. We're going to call it the heartbeat of your business. You transfer to Google Drive, put your heartbeat in there. There's no protection here, so they transfer it over to here, and then you're supposed to trust them to bring it. I'm like, how many links in that chain do you need? And I'm like, this makes no sense to me. Why you would go through all, you gotta pay a subscription to these guys anyways, this being the Google, the G Suite. And like, we have a G Suite account, like I said, I share with Google, and yes, it's a mid-tier account, but I'm not looking to it to be like my ultimate data protection. And I would never want to have to pay another company, because this is, again, all of the most important information I'm trusting, again, with not just us and our employees. I'm trusting with Google and all of its infrastructure. Then I'm trusting with Kryptonite, and I'm trusting that all these links are secure. And I'm like, it just, easy to succeed, hard to fail. It just didn't fit for me. And so the other answer is, we do a very truly do like a physical backup also once a month. This is the part that I can do. Let's pretend Microsoft lets me down. Let's pretend my hardware lets me down. I can always just, again, go back in time, and I'm going to recommend you use a solid state drive, just because they're more durable. You want something with some durability to it, so that the spinning hard drives are vulnerable, because if the pins touch the hard drive wheel, it scrambles it. You'd never know, and it would be just terribly disappointing to go back and rely on your hard drive to find that it was scrambled years back and you couldn't tell. So again, once a month, all our managers, we do the update, or the hard drive backup on our time machine that our computer does automatically for us. Then we disconnect it, leave it aside, so that in the event everything goes sideways, we have a physical backup as well. So we've walked through a bunch of principles here. I'm going to tell you that it was work for us as an organization, and me specifically. I took the role on to build out the infrastructure of the cybersecurity piece and do the transfer of all the information to the Microsoft ecosystem. It wasn't easy. It was lots of drag and drops and uploads, and leave the computer on overnight so it would cycle up. And it took days worth of time. And then they're setting up the policy, of the different policies for all the different users. But now that it's been up and running, and realistically, 4 years ago I started, and I'm going to say for the first year, the first 3 months, you're like actively trying to figure it out. For the first year, you've worked out the kinks. The last 2 years, we haven't had any issues. And one of my favorite parts about setting things up this way and having everything controlled, I know whose hardware you're getting. If you come to work for us, you get a MacBook computer and an iPhone, and we got a subscription login for you and a one password, and that's it. So I can tell you that onboarding an employee is 3 hours. So it's like, and they're set up and ready to do anything they want, ready to connect to our network of free-flowing information, and they're able to access the information that they're required to access, and there's no complications beyond that. They have to learn how to use Teams if they've never used it. Yeah, but that's the normal part. The onboarding people can be painful, and people can be sitting at their desks for weeks and not know where information is stored or how to access it or who they need permissions from, and we wanted to avoid all that. Because we want our employees to feel like they belong. We don't want them to feel frustrated, and we want them to be able to get to work. That's part of the spread your wings and fly. So maintain your computers with new hardware. Obviously, I love the idea of Touch ID or Finger ID and Face ID and things like that. Keep your software updated, of course. That goes for the Microsoft piece and the Apple, the iOS pieces, and keep them updated. And then one of my favorite parts here, we just recently did this. We just offboarded an employee, and they were an important employee. So what does the offboarding process look like with the way that we set this up? It was super straightforward, because at the end of their time, they gave us some notice, and it was like, okay, so we could downgrade their access and permissions and start to go, okay, so you're no longer global admin. We'll start to collect your information. We'll take your emails, and we'll redirect it to somebody else, so that everything you've been working on, your client relationships, are all managed through the Microsoft ecosystem space, and so that there's continuity, so clients don't feel like the email inbox is locked. There's no private information on the employee's phone or their own personal computer, which I've seen other businesses struggle with, because then you can't take somebody else's personal computer back. And it was this really neat thing to just watch how the system worked flawlessly, in the sense that, at the end of the last day, we logged them out of their one password. We changed their user ID credentials for their Microsoft, so they could no longer log in anyways, even if they had memorized the password. We just changed it. They handed in their phone, they handed in their computer, and they were done. And they were done in the sense that there was nothing outstanding. We had access to everything they were working on. They didn't take any of our business home with them. It was clean and free and easy, like here's your phone, here's your computer, and it's like it's all here. And it was painless. And it didn't put any pressure to the exiting transition of our employees. And it was a good example for me how the philosophies that we put in place, easy to succeed and hard to fail, really served everybody really well. Add to that, we haven't had any breaches or anything like this, and it's really worked. So this was intended to be a bit more of a succinct video, but obviously I've expanded. So I do hope that this has been a bit of a guide for you. I know that it's cybersecurity is a big world, and if you're responsible for a business, you have a lot of decisions to make. And I hope that this is choosing to do data infrastructure properly. I hope this is a decision that you choose to make because your business is counting on you. Your employees are counting on you, and your customers in the marketplace are counting on you. And I want to stand here with like, you can do it. Because I started not so long ago with a why do I have to, and all my passwords are the same, and I hate that I even need to, and I just wish I didn't. I just want to go to work and do good work. But times have changed, and so we evolve. And this doesn't have to be something you fight, and it doesn't have to complicate your business. You do need to follow some guiding principles, or it will become a confusing mess. And it will frustrate you and your employees, and you'll spend a lot of money on it, and a lot of money in downtime and wasted time and lost productivity. That's the part that I see is the biggest collateral damage to just poorly executed transitions like this. Again, there's going to be people that say they got different approaches, to what I laid out. That's totally fine. I'm not telling you whether yours is better than mine or not. I'm telling you what's worked for us. It's proven. I've put a considerable amount of time and my best effort into this because I think it matters, which is why I want to share it, because I want you to succeed. We need great business partners, and as partners, collaborators, colleagues in the market doing great things, and I want you to succeed. And as we draw to the end of 2021 here, I want to say Happy New Year and all the best in 2022. It's going to be a great year, so keep up the great work. Thanks.